From the heart of the jungle, where strength meets balance. Crafted from select beans, roasted to perfection. Built for those who move with purpose. Designed for the beast within. In a world fueled by chaos, one roast dares to rise. Citrus brightness, tea-like smoothness, a finish of creamy vanilla. Born from the jungle's heartbeat, where balance meets raw power. Designed for the mission ahead. From the first light to the final push. Gorilla Roast powers the relentless. Monkey Werx. Works for the soul. All right, hey, welcome, folks. It's going to be your sit rep. It's 10/21/2025, coming to you from the Monkey Lounge here in the great state of Texas. So today we're going to be talking about the geopolitical Jenga that is taking shape. We're going to talk about things happening here in the United States, and we're also going to be talking about things that are happening with respect to Russia and Ukraine and what we're doing with natural gas and oil to Russia that is absolutely going to have a very, very bad response back if we continue down this road. So let's do this. Before we get started, let me take us on over here to the Mini. We're going to take a look at the skies, and that would not be the skies. That would be the skies. Just to show you what is currently up. We're sitting around 220 aircraft up. I've stripped out almost that same amount in terms of trainers. So very, very active training sky, even with the government shutdown. But we're going to, let's just kick it up here to the side real fast. You can see the high flyers as always. Just notice that they are pretty much on the whole southern flank right now. We just cycled through a bunch that were up, and it literally was about 90% of the U.S. was covered in some type of intelligence, reconnaissance, and surveillance. So that's okay. They are, and they'll be back up. They always are. But let's go ahead and, as we're talking about that, the ISR, let's get into what's going on out there. You'll notice that looking very closely still at North Korea from South Korea, pretty active over the last 5 days. A little bit of stuff happening down in Australia, and then over the Philippines. Now, let me take you, Middle East is going to look like it always looks. That's Gaza. We'll talk about that here in a minute, too, and the ceasefire that is no longer really a ceasefire. And you can see the usual, looking into or around Kaliningrad, and then the layers that are looking deep into Russia. And, of course, by that, from that altitude and that direction, they're clearly looking at St. Petersburg, Moscow, right? So Moscow is right here, St. Petersburg up north. But guaranteed they are giving Ukraine some targets, okay? And then over the United States, look at the amount. I mean, 5 days, this is insane, the amount of flights that are up out over the water, looking at ship traffic more than likely. And then a whole southern border, some man in the middle, signal intelligence over Georgia, and then up off the eastern seaboard. So, okay, let's get into sub-hunters. And this one here as well, you'll just notice coming out of Japan, Okinawa, headed down towards Philippines, and then some activity around Australia and over into New Zealand. Some broken traces headed into the Pacific. And then you can see over the Mediterranean, pretty active. A little blip there over Saudi. But as you could, just note north of Libya, okay, over the water. Then, of course, little pops coming out of the UK and out over the North Sea and up into Norway. Then we get over to the United States, and it's pretty active. The one big takeaway is, besides all the flurry coming out of Jacksonville Naval Air Station, is just up and down from Jacksonville down past Cape Canaveral, very active off the East Coast. This is a high-altitude balloon. I have no idea how it got in my feed. Thought it was an odd pattern for a P-8 to be flying. But nonetheless, I think I've got it figured out and got it pulled from that. But, yeah, Pretty active for 5 days of Navy P-8s, okay? All right, let's talk R-135, signal intelligence. And you'll notice the flight that departs from Okinawa heads out over the Pacific towards Alaska. And let me take you over to the Middle East. It looks like they're doing a little bit of flying around very near the Strait of Hormuz. Clearly, they go dark, so they're obviously listening in on what's going on in Iran. Probably out over the water there, too. And, of course, you can see absolutely zero over Europe. In 5 days? Not buying it. Not buying it. I see a flight leaving the UK, headed back to the US. I see a broken trace of a flight that goes out and does not show its return, that heads out toward the Caribbean. All right, probably out here somewhere near Cuba, maybe even further south, looking from the southern border across Baja, and then a flight that leaves up towards Alaska. All right. And you can see the one that comes inbound, as we showed you, leaving Okinawa into Alaska, and then a little broken trace of one that departs. All right, now pay attention to this, because this one's interesting. This is going to be a constant Phoenix. This is the last 5 days, but you'll just notice this is a nuke sniffer. And you'll see it kind of heads out towards maybe Fort Carson area. All right, down towards Texas, Louisiana, and then comes back. Right, and then this whole bunch of flurry of activity in kind of southwestern Nebraska. You'll see it takes off and then it heads out that general direction. Very active. Again, this is looking for something that should not be there. All right. Okay. E6, Navy, TACAMO, take charge, move out, talking to your nuclear submarine nukes, I guess, ICBMs. And then you'll notice too, out over the water, as it heads down to Florida, then kind of disappears out over the Gulf of America. A little bit of activity up the eastern seaboard, and then up and down the west coast. Right, E6. Now AWACS. And you'll note just one that takes off out of Okinawa, but really just not really much else there. Nothing down under. Get out, nothing over the Middle East. And then, of course, the usual stuff we see around Europe. And then kind of around the Horn there over Gibraltar and back into the Mediterranean. Then we get over to the United States, and a little more active. As you'll notice, this thing, let me take us over there real fast. All right. Kind of broad brush, coast to coast, off the Atlantic, down south towards the Pacific, and then right up to the southern Texas border. All right, again, that's AWACS. Now let's get over here to our zoomies, and we start talking about all of the activity happening with our air refuelers. These are the tankers that are up, and that is a big indicator of not only fighter but potential bombers. Right, I did just read an article that we just put some B-1s into Japan, I believe it was. All right, and then you can see activity into Kuwait, pretty hot and heavy over the Mediterranean. All right, so again, big indicator of fighter activity. All right, now take a look at the C-17s here. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself again. Notice right here, that's a big indicator. We've got fighters out over the Caribbean, right down south of probably Cuba, out north of Caracas in that general area. So it looks like we got some fighter patrols going on there. U.S. just covered up. West Coast, East Coast, borders, north and south. Okay, again, big indicator of fighters. All right, let's talk C-17s. Now, the interesting thing is, you'll notice as well in Japan, Okinawa, very active, but also notice the amount of flights that go down into the Philippines. Right, logistics, right? So, and then one little in and out, back and forth, round tripper in Australia. All right, and then you can see the volume going into the Middle East, Qatar, Bahrain. My concern here is that we may be trying to rehome some Gazans because of the ceasefire agreement, bringing them right into the United States and into Europe. And they'll keep that pretty quiet if they are indeed doing that. But look at the flurry of activity going across the drink. So I don't put it past our government to do that, honestly. All right. So you'd think they'd know that that's not a good call, but they surprise us every time. So not into New York. Looks like it's mostly into Norfolk, down into Charleston, etc. But again, just a major volume. And then you see a little bit of stuff trickle down into USVI, probably tied to the Venezuela piece that we'll talk to here in just a minute. All right. Okay. Now let's kind of start peeling this back. So Trump is threatening to send military to San Francisco. Okay, so we talked just recently, we were going into the details just around Insurrection Act. And I will tell you, for the Washington, D.C. aspect, more than likely, I mean, yeah, you could do insurrection, but you're not going to put the military in charge there that you would need in order to do tribunals. In order to get to tribunals in D.C., you're going to have to do martial law. All right, that's because that suspends the Constitution and habeas corpus. It allows us to use troops, and it puts the troops in command of your court system and everything else in D.C. So the Insurrection Act, though, if you look at all of the pushback by judges and governors, et cetera, like Chicago and Portland, in order for Trump to get troops in there and to get the job done, he's going to have to declare the Insurrection Act. He would not be the first president to do it. There's been many before him that have done that. I did a whole show on that. And so if you've got questions on how that kind of goes into play, go back and watch that show. And that was just a couple sit reps ago. Okay. So now one thing I don't necessarily agree on here is he says something about San Francisco, they want us there. I don't know, man. It's a pretty liberal city, highly Democrat, centric. I mean, you think about this. Nancy Pelosi is from there, and she has been in power for about 50 years. So yeah, she's been between the Congress side of the house for about 38. But nonetheless, look, that San Francisco, it's a bad area, man. And you've seen the homelessness and all the other stuff going on there. It's bad. So you would absolutely have to act on that here soon, probably more sooner than later. All right. Now, this is the one that I think we need to have our eyes on. This is a very important piece. Pay close attention to it because you hear Texas warning about food benefits cutting out. Okay. Now, this is important because it's not just Texas, it's the entire country. With the government shutdown that is in effect in about 7 days, in fact, October 27th, the money runs out for food stamps. So Texas, yeah, it's a big deal. That means states will have to step up to try to fund it and hope they get paid back. That may be the path that they have to take, but I will tell you this. There are 41 million people in the United States on food stamps. What do you think happens when the food doesn't come and the money doesn't come? Right? They're going to be upsetty spaghetti, to say the least. Now, of the 41 million, not all of them are going to go sideways. Okay, there's a lot of mothers and a lot of kids that really need that SNAP benefit. No toys about it. It's very important. They can't afford to feed their family without it, right? They need that supplemental income. In some cases, they just need the income, period, because they don't have any other means. Now, there are 11 million Section 8 housing people on food stamps. Okay. Those, if there was ever anybody, those are like career food stampers. Okay. Like that's their job for life. The minute they can get on food stamps, they stay on it, have no desire to go to work, don't care to go out and try and earn an income. They want the government providing for them. And for those folks that are on that food stamp program, you shut off their food, you shut off their money, they will take to the streets straight up because they don't mess around. That will get sideways. That's the stuff you got to worry about. The 12 million people that are in that category, right? And that's major cities all over the United States. That's a lot of people. So nonetheless, keep your eyes on this, because this is a recipe for one, insurrection, and two, martial law. Okay. Could it be part of the plan? Maybe, but just pay attention to it, because if you live in those affected areas, you may want to pay, very close attention to it, and have a plan for a plan in case you have to get out of that area, because it could get pretty bad. All right. Not saying it will. Hopefully something will get resolved, but I don't have a lot of faith in the government coming together right now to turn everything back on. I really don't. So now I will tell you too, if you're on Social Security, that is not a problem. You don't have to worry about that. If there are any rumors going around that that's the case, that is not the case. In fact, there has been something passed to prevent that. That's what they would call critical funding. And so that stuff does not get shut off. So you're in good shape on that. All right. But this side, it may go to the states. They may have to fund themselves for a little bit, and or not. Right. Okay. This one, this just goes to show you the severity of what we're dealing with. You think, the No King's Day. I mean, even though they look like a bunch of queens out there, I will tell you that this kind of thing does not go away. Secret Service has their hands full because the crazies are in abundance, right? Mental health is a big issue here in our country and the world for that matter, but our country seems to be really, it's like there's something in the water. I don't get it, but Secret Service discovers a hunting stand overlooking Trump's Air Force One exit. And so I saw an overhead picture of where this was located, and I will tell you that it is a very small patch. It's almost like a lot that just doesn't have anything on it, just this little patch of trees. And it is straight up, if you get into that stand and the direction of that stand, it's pointing straight to the runway tarmac area where Air Force One sits, all right, and the Trump aircraft as well. So going to be interesting to see if they can figure out who this is tied to, okay? But they say suspicious. It's absolutely, there was something up with that. If you saw the overhead and the small patch of land that this is on, they definitely aren't hunting. Okay. All right. Okay. This one, Venezuela says defense against U.S. deployment is now ready. So Maduro is ready to rock and roll. Now, keep in mind too, that Trump has indicated he has authorized a covert CIA operation against Venezuela without offering specifics. Obviously, he's not going to do that, but yeah, this is going to be pretty interesting. Today, we've completed all the country integrated defense zones. This is Maduro. He said in a recording released on Telegram. He also announced new military exercise he called Independence 200. So let's just see how this all shakes loose, but it's not probably going to go well for him. Okay. And moving on. All right. You remember all the porous borders that we had during the Biden regime, and you think for a minute, well, maybe this is how they got in, but no, it was actually through the visa. So somebody approved this guy to get through. Now, they did say that he lied on his visa application, but this guy was part of the October 7th atrocities that happened in Israel, and they arrested him in Louisiana. So I think he started out in Tulsa, Oklahoma, lied to get in on his visa, and they picked him up in Louisiana. So these are people that we know of, right, that have come through the legal process, even though they say it was actually but they didn't say it 100%, but they alluded to it was basically a fake visa, that the whole process was kind of, not necessarily the legal path. And a proper, true visa, but he got his hands on one somehow and got into the country, and they picked him up. So this goes back to the whole, when I start looking at all the flights coming and going in and out of the Middle East right now, I start to really think about what we have been witnessing with the you got 2,000 Afghanis. There we go. That's the word I'm looking for. 2,000 Afghanis a month coming into our country. I don't know that program ever stopped. Okay. And that started back when we departed the country. Then, of course, you see all of the folks coming in from the Middle East. This is all part of the globalist elite plan. And the reason they do that is, look, we figured out a long time ago, there's nothing you can do to right the ship when it comes to the Middle East. They have been fighting forever. They're going to fight forever. So what did somebody figure out, right? The Great Reset, WEF, I remember all of that, forced migration. What they figured out was, well, hey, why don't we just take these people, and instead of trying to change the Middle East, let's bring them to all of our countries. We'll put them in the United States, and we'll put them in, all over and throughout Europe and Australia, et cetera. And just watch how they assimilate. And if you haven't noticed, they're not really assimilating very well because they're not used to the way we live. So it's a bad idea, and this kind of thing is only going to get worse. If you think that we've got a problem, just to confirm it, go look at how many mosques are in just the state of Texas alone now. There's like 338 mosques in the state of Texas. Right? Now, this isn't like the Field of Dreams where they build it and they'll come. No, they're here. And because they're here, they put in the mosque. And then what happens next? They take over city councils. They take over local school boards. They take over Congress. They start jumping in and taking seats within the congressional districts. Before you know it, they have overrun your country. It's called stealth jihad. And that's not a myth. Okay, go look at Dearborn, Michigan. Go look at Little Somalia up there in Minnesota. Right? And if you want to go pull that thread a little further, go look at the UK. And you tell me they don't have a problem. The UK is overrun. Right? They are minorities in their own country, and they've got little pockets of communities throughout, London all the way north that are practicing Sharia law. Okay. All right. Now, speaking of, you just can't fix broken. Okay. Whenever this peace agreement or the ceasefire agreement took place, I said, there's not a, what's the over under? I said less than 30 days. And I was jokingly said probably about a week. And that's about right. About a week. And so I'm going to show you a map here in just a second that it's 9 days old. So, just over a week. Okay. Since everybody signed to this ceasefire agreement, and they're already popping shots off at each other. Let me just take you over here to this side. And you remember what this looked like back when we had, Gaza just getting popped every single day. And now take a look at it. Same stuff. These are Israeli airstrikes across Gaza. Okay. Taking out militants. So again, it didn't last, not going to last. This is just going to keep firing. And then you get up here to the north and same thing's happening. Israel is popping things off into Lebanon. And of course they're hitting Hezbollah that is camping on the north, right? So big deal. This, like I said, it wasn't going to last. We knew it wasn't going to last. All right. So we'll come back to the Ukraine here in just a minute. Now, take a look, as I've shown you in the past. These are all of the flight restrictions, right? They're either danger boxes tied to exercises, upcoming exercises. So, but I mean, if you start to just look at every country and you think, they don't broadcast their stuff here. There's really nothing out here. But you start to look at where there are a lot of people that live, okay? You start talking about France and Spain and Portugal and across Ukraine and Russia. Just look at all the red, right? It's because we're on a war footing, folks. And I'm going to show you, look at the Middle East. Look at all of these, just India is now starting to get covered up, right? You get down, Australia's starting to get covered up. The United States is covered up. All right, let's get into the news cycle and what all that ties to. So Ukraine and U.S., they're preparing a contract for a supply of 25 Patriot air defense systems. Now, before you go, whoa, Bohica, right? And that's an acronym. It stands for bend over. Here it comes again. This is not really, the headline catches as if the United States is paying for all of these Patriot defense systems, but that's not really the case. What's going on here is they're signing a contract, and somehow Zelensky is going to pay for them, whether it's Ukraine, not Ukraine, NATO buying them for Ukraine, or Ukraine coming up with their own money. That's kind of where this is all headed. All right. So it's not us giving them. Now, during Biden's time, yeah, absolutely, he'd hand them the keys to the castle. And I think we probably will find out here in the not too distant future why that was happening. Okay. All right. After a reported shouting match, Zelensky and Trump agree battle lines should be frozen before final peace can be brokered. It'll probably go about as well as the peace that we see in the Middle East right now. But they, once again, were going at it. Evidently, this guy likes to bite the hand that feeds him, and is, got a little salty with Trump again, and Trump fired back at him. But look at this. It says, officials said that Trump told Zelensky he was losing the war and warning him, if Putin wants it, he will destroy you. I guess that didn't make him very happy. Zelensky was very negative following the meeting, according to one of the officials, adding that European leaders were not optimistic, but pragmatic with planning the next steps. So we talk about this, and what are the next steps? What's really happening over there? And so you can see the squeeze starting to take shape with Russia. And I do believe that if there was one thing that could potentially set this entire thing off, right, it was going to be the oil and gas with Russia. Remember, this is their number one commodity. So now let's kind of continue on. And, I just noticed my mic is sitting a little high here, and it drives me crazy. I'm going to drop this down. And evidently, that's the one screen camera that I didn't fix. And you saw the banana on the back there behind me. So, yeah, I know. Monkeys eat bananas. All right. But anyway, the EU agrees on a plan to phase out Russian gas imports. So I think this equates to around 21 billion euros or something. Now, take this with a pinch of salt. Okay. A lot of what has been happening, we saw the Nord Stream get blown up, and that shut off a lot of the natural gas that was coming into Germany. But then Germany just turned around and started buying it from Israel. Okay. Now, again, this is where I think if there was ever an opportunity for things to go awry and for a war basically to be triggered, it's this right here. I mean, gas and oil, that is Russia's number one export. That's where they make all their money. So when you start to hit them in the wallet, right, it's probably going to have some blowback. So Trump vows to keep massive tariffs on India until Russian oil imports cease. So there was some talk that they had a conversation, but then as they started to kind of pull the thread on it, that there was no more additional conversation. But it says here, I spoke with Prime Minister Modi of India, and he said he's not going to be doing the Russian oil thing. Now that he told him on Air Force One, but asked about India's assertion that it was not aware of any conversation between Modi and Trump. Trump replied, but if they want to say that, then they'll just continue to pay massive tariffs, and they don't want to do that. So did a conversation take place? Did it not take place? I don't know. But as I showed you in one of the previous sit reps, India is buying tons and tons of oil from Russia, tons of it. Okay. So in fact, all of the oil that Russia was selling to the United States and NATO is now being sold to China and India in mass. Okay. Large amounts, exponentially higher than anything we ever bought combined between all of our countries. Okay. Now, you saw Zelensky has been asking for tomahawks, and Trump at first said, I'll approve it. He's going to get them. And now he's starting to kind of backstep a little bit. And the reason for that is because Russia immediately said, hey, look, we can't tell on the Tomahawk missile whether or not that's a nuclear or a conventional weapon. And so it's going to come with some far-reaching repercussions if one of those come across our border and hits something, or we pick it up before it hits something, and we are going to respond accordingly. So if it came out of Ukraine, more than likely Russia's going to pop a nuke off in, at Ukraine, not knowing whether or not that's a nuke. They can't afford to take the risk. Okay, so Trump, I think, has kind of stepped back a little bit and realized and recognized that they've got a pretty good point here, and that in doing so, you could take somebody that is absolutely going to use the weapons that he's given and potentially spark off World War III quickly. Okay. Now, I think it has the potential to do so anyway, because here's the thing. Let's say that Zelensky gets his way and he gets his hands on tomahawks, right? He's already shown you that he is willing to strike deep into the heart of Russia to take out oil platforms, all right? Refinery, whatever it may be, anything tied to their energy sectors, he's hitting it with these drones. Now, they don't have quite the boom as a Tomahawk missile. If you give him a Tomahawk and he uses it and he hits a refinery, the refinery's not going to come back online. Very, very bad. I think maybe Trump senses that and knows that, okay, if I give him these, he's going to use them to hit these refineries. And that's going to probably get a big response back from Russia. A very big response. The other piece, too, is realize that it was leaked that the U.S. and NATO have been giving Ukraine strike data, right? Telling them this is where you need to hit, etc. Okay. So the fact that that came out, and then all of a sudden you find out that we could be behind that and giving them tomahawks, puts us straight in the crosshairs. So, maybe somebody, cooler minds prevailed. Maybe Trump is rethinking that. But nonetheless, look at this. A giant Russian gas plant suspends intake after Ukrainian drone strike. So this is what they're doing. And Ukraine is going to continue to do it. And then it's going to get to a point where Russia is going to come back at them very heavy-handed, maybe even nuclear, right? All right. Now, remember I showed you the ghost ships for Russia. There's about 405 of them in the fleet known, okay? Well, it turns out, too, that China has now joined the Shadow Fleet, and the two of them are kind of working together, and they've just done the first ever dark LNG ship-to-ship transfer. That's what this image is right here. And that one, that could be a big deal, because now you're talking about two very large countries that do not like the United States, that are very much working together. In fact, if I were to show you all of the Russian flights, besides what we normally would see, okay, and let me just take you over. I'm going to go ahead and fast forward that little portion and hit pause. All right. You'll notice that there are a multitude of flights just in the last 5 days going in and out of Beijing, okay? And that's that closest spot to us right there in the corner of China. And so Russia is very, very in lockstep with China. Between the two of them, they are much larger in size than the United States in terms of military, okay? So not a good thing when you start to see this happening. The other piece, too, is if these guys are working together and somehow China gets hit in all of this, then you could have, just like World War II, fronts, in the Pacific and fronts in Europe. Okay. All right. Now this is another piece to you. Let's just assume that things continue to degrade when it comes to Ukraine and Russia, and we decide to put a blockade in place. This area right here, going through Istanbul and coming out into the Black Sea, would be where we would do so. This is an area to watch, okay? Because these are oil tankers, the greener cargo ships. But notice the flow. Where does everything head? Like the majority of the flow is going right into Russia. Okay. So if for some reason things continue to go sideways here and, Russia decides to do a limited strike even into some NATO countries or even hit the U.S. for that matter, this is absolutely on the table. You stop this right here. You stop the flow of oil and gas. Now, don't think for a minute Ukraine doesn't know that. All right. And they could do something to sabotage this area, this transit, much like we saw with the Suez Canal, the Suez Canal, right, where something blocked it, and then everybody had to go around Africa in order to get their cargo. All right, very expensive. This pass to get through here in the Suez, right? It saves these shipping companies, oil companies, a lot of money. Now, if they had to go all the way around Africa, you're talking. Look at the flows. I mean, that's a very, very large. Takes a lot more fuel, a lot more time. So being able to do these cut throughs are key. All right. Well, listen, I've thrown a lot at you, but over the next 7 days, folks, we need to be paying close attention to what happens with our government shutdown, because it does have the potential for going south very quickly when it comes to the food stamp program. Okay. And of course, I still think we are making a very big gamble when it comes to taking out Russia's ability to provide an income for their country. And that, I think, is going to be met with a very bad response if we continue down that path. So, all right, you guys be safe out there. Stay frosty. Keep that powder dry. We'll talk soon. God bless. Monkey out.